Welcome to Watercolor Wednesday. My name is Kathy Futrell, and here we are at the Church of the Palms in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. Today we're going to be painting flamingos. All right, here we go. This is a painting I tried out with a flamingo, and I have a handout somewhere that I will show you what we're working on. That image is the flamingos. And this will be my inspiration today. The flamingos are from the Sarasota Jungle Gardens. Any of you been to the Jungle Gardens? Yay! They're not good posers because all they want to do is come up and eat out of your hand if you are kind enough to bring some food for them. I've kind of used this shape as the inspiration for working here, and then I took from the photo from the Jungle Gardens, let's see, I had another reference. I think I was looking at this blackbird, and although he was hidden very much from the others. And here's what I want to focus on today. I'm always saying that we need a focal point, and that if you use the rule of thirds, that is a photographer's approach to any image they want to make dominant. And so dominance is another word for focal point. What is most interesting about the painting? Where does your eye go first? The other key things are balance and unity. And the thing about having balance here, for example, is that when you have something large over here, it needs to shift toward the center, but it's best not to put anything dead center. I've used the little baby flamingo, and perhaps this is just further away, that this little flamingo has an interaction of kind of a yin-yang positive and negative space effect. I'm also doing a second thing today, and that is talking about complementary colors. So to begin this little study, I started thinking about my dominance of an element. Now, elements in art are line, color, form, shape, texture, value. When you have dominance of a shape or a color or a value, it means that that object stands out more important than anything else in the picture. That means that it's darker or lighter or bigger or has more detail or texture. It's where your eye goes first. So in this little group of apples, you have smaller ones, but this one right here is the one up front. It's the bigger one, has a little more dark on it, a little more shadow. The dominant object should never be at the edge or the center of your piece of paper. If it's on the edge, if it falls off the edge, if it's really over here, then you have an unbalanced image. Focal point means that your eye is going to go to a certain part, even of that image, and where I want the eye to go is here, where that focal point should be. Remember, if you break your paper up into 3 equal parts, this is a focal point area, this is a focal point, this is a focal point, this could be a focal point. So next week when we talk about poinsettias, I'm going to say, here's where our focal point is, here's where our focal point is. And so here is where I want the focal point on the flamingo. So I'm going to try to make that head more important as I do the sketch. Wow. So I'm going to start with this as my inspiration. And I think I'm only, just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to talk about the dominance in this. I wouldn't necessarily try to draw the flamingos horizontally unless I was doing a group, because the dominant shape of the flamingo is a very, very vertical idea. Okay, long legs.
Excuse me, I was thinking that if you want to gather up there, if you can see
do come
stand around and watch her up there.
And because this is such a small sketch.
Well, we can see you.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do for my flamingo is I don't want to start my head too low down. I want to be sure that my head of the flamingo is up toward the top of the watercolor painting. And if you want to do just a quick little gesture, thinking about, the shape of the head, and sometimes gesturing. I do a lot of sketching, and also I do a lot of erasing, and I do not hesitate to do any erasing because I want to get the composition right and not go later and say, oh my gosh, I wish I had not done that. Pay attention to the anatomy of your birds. I had to admit that I had never drawn a flamingo before. And it's just sort of like when I was about 10 or 11, someone said, can you draw an elephant? And I said, I can draw anything. Well, the problem was I couldn't draw that elephant because I had never drawn an elephant, and I knew it, I saw it in my head, but I had to find a reference. And I practiced and practiced to show that person that actually I could draw an elephant, but it took me a while to figure it out. Well, just like the flamingo, I've got to really look at the body of the flamingo, and then just as someone pointed out, when the legs are, look at this leg, it goes out and comes back down. I don't like that leg, so I'm going to look at this leg. Remember, we are the controllers of our design, and I just want to keep those legs a little closer together, and I want to bring that leg down. These are long-legged birds, right, Louise?
Yes.
And the problem is if you make these, if you do your sketching too low down, then you're not going to have room, and you really don't want to cut off. You don't want your painting to finish here, and you want to leave some space here at the bottom. So now I'm going to go back and work on. The shape seems to be fairly good, but I need to make this beak more correct. So another thing I do try to do is sketch every now and then. So I quickly did another sketch in another pose of the bird, and I really did some observation about the shape of that beak, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh, they're all different. Oh, well, so what I have to do then is just study the one I'm looking at. And they have this eyeball up here that's well, that gave it a real mean look, didn't it?
I always think of them as having an attitude.
They do have an attitude. Actually, they do have an attitude. They're kind of like seagulls. They're not real pleasant.
Yeah, kind of strut around.
They do strut.
Well, if you were as beautiful as they were, we all would do that too. You know,
Well
they're very beautiful.
Well said. Yes. So the head is somewhat detached from this neck, and it is a very narrow neck. It's sort of like I wish I had made my palm trees a little smaller, but the trunks, because the truth is you can always widen this neck if you get it too thin. So I'm just following along and observing that I'm drawing my lines a little darker than I usually would. I probably would have started just with a lighter sketch that I had. This seems to come very close. Look at the negative space. And look, I didn't get this exactly the way it is here, which of course I just had him lift his head a little bit more. But the truth is, when you are drawing from a reference, kind of check out the negative spaces, and they will help you get the positive spaces. So I'm adding just a little bit of fluff here and a little bit more of a tail, and I really don't mind getting kind of close on this edge because I always need more space. If a person or a face, a creature is looking in one direction, you always need more space over here and less space in the back. So I also follow the rule that I did not want to have any, I didn't want my bird in the middle. Now I do have room for a second one, but I'm just going to get this bird done, and I'm going to also talk to you about my reds and my greens. And I'm going to use my reds and my greens because remember that on the color wheel we have, I should be doing this in color, but you will get the message. So we have our three primary colors. We have red, yellow, and blue. And what happens when we mix red, yellow, and blue, we get our green. And green is the opposite of the red on the color wheel. Just as when we mix red and blue, we get orange, and that is the opposite of blue. And just as when we mix red and yellow, what did I say?
Red and blue.
Oh, red and blue, thank you. Red and blue will give me my purple, and purple is the opposite of yellow. Thank you. Thanks for paying attention. All right, so this is going to be my flamingo in a little bit of water because I couldn't find a reference for any feet. So I just decided, well, that'll do it then. So a little bit of balance can be done with something in the foreground, and I'll just do a little plant here. And while I was looking at this beautiful background, since my inspiration was going to be that idea of green and red, I'm going to use, now someone said, but flamingos are kind of orange. I said, no, they're more pink, red, a little bit of orange. Yes, I could go with that. So if that is true, then I should be somewhere between my red and orange and my blue and my green. And that will give me a complement, an exact complement. Now, I'll have to go between the red-green combination, and I'm going to start with my green, and I'm going to be pale. I'm not going to be bright red, and I'm not going to be bright green. Well, this is pretty bright green. I'm not going to be a pure green. If I were doing a pure green, I would be here with this green, right?
Yeah.
And if I were going to be red, I would be rose madder red, or which is the alizarin is almost the same color, but real bright. But instead, I'm going to be lighter, more of a pinker color, and less strong and more light. So my two colors are going to be mingled with a little more orange and a little more blue to make that complement color. So I will begin with just pushing some negative space. I'm not going to do any masking today. I'm just going to go kind of quickly with some wash and color around my flamingo. And I'm going to also suggest some of that foliage that's going on in the background. And you notice that I went around the bird's neck in a way I might either keep this light in this area or I might make it dark. And that will help to emphasize where I want the focal point. Remember, I want the focal point to be here with the head. So I'm still doing my little, these are like palmettos or grass. It looks really, looks more like grass in the background. And I'm just using my flat brush to extend some of this. And I'll just keep going with my green. I don't mind mixing a little bit of blue-green at the same time. And I want the color to repeat what's going on here. In other words, whatever's on this side of the flamingo needs to kind of come to that side. We're going to, I want you, as you begin to sketch and practice your flamingo shapes, if you will also consider what kind of composition you want to make. If you want a series of flamingos in the same setting, or if you want to practice first with just one flamingo, that's a great way to start your subject. And also, how do you want to treat the background? This could be sky, this could be all water. Look how dark the subject is here with the Sarasota photo. It shows the water being reflective of the shapes in... I know, Jim.
I'm wondering why you don't paint the flamingo first instead of that one.
Oh,
Say the reason.
I just did it that way when I did that one, and it made me feel good.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so I really don't, I think you could do the flamingo first, but I think I wanted to establish, there's so much space here. It's kind of like painting the sky. As a rule in water, I can answer that. That's a good question. I just realized the answer. When you're working in watercolor, you should go background to foreground. So, it is like painting the sky before the sailboat, okay? So maybe I instinctively, rather than it just felt good, but this was feeling pretty good. So that was fun. Now I could keep, while this is wet, I could do a little bit more in the darker here's another thing. We talk about masking things out. I even thought about doing that here, where I just would mask out some of the light and then just keep going, but I decided, gee, that was fun to do. And I think you invent things based on your inspiration. So I would like for you to do the same. You know, you learn by watching people paint, and you learn by YouTubing, and you learn by just experimentation. And I also do things that I haven't done before, just to see if it works. And sometimes it doesn't. And I didn't want to overdo this, and I also wanted to keep it as a Christmas theme. Now, if it was really going to be a Christmas theme, I would do some holly and berries, or I would do some. But I decided this is Florida, and I'm just going to keep it. I'm going to do a little bit more here, because I wanted the water to also be a little green.
We have holly in Florida.
We do?
Yes, we do.
Oh.
Used to have some in our yard.
Back in the old days,
You
Jim?
buy it at Hobby Lobby, it's plastic.
Oh. So I'm suggesting that the water has a little bit of a blue-green to it, and just getting something started there, and doing a little bit of a negative, because I want some lights and some darks on this little palmetto bush that I decided to put here. And that was just an intuitive thing to add balance to the design. So I was doing this as a positive thing here. And another thing that sometimes you just want to do it. You just want to say, why don't I do some texture? Why don't I just drop some water in here and see what happens? Because that can add to the mystique of the fun, sort of like confetti. So this is just going to be my, I don't know what that is. Looks like a piece of eraser, probably. And just always do your strokes for water in a flat horizontal effect. So we were talking about water with our sailboats before. It's anything up close does have some little ripples in it. And the other thing that's going to happen is that the bird itself, the flamingo, will have a bit of, although I think the legs are probably not really red so much, it's kind of grayish, but there might be some pink that's hinted at in the water, which will give you a neutral color when you start mixing those. So this could be a little draw brush, or bright. I always use my brightest color in the foreground, and then we'll do some light color, and then I'll come in and do some dark color with this little palmetto bush. Okay, now I'm going to switch and let some of this background dry, and I shall paint the flamingo itself, and it will be the colors that seem to work even with a touch of orange in the body itself. And I'm going to begin it's a little heavy. So that's where the paper towel comes in. I'm going to keep it a little light because I'm going to add shadow, and not try to overrun I want that color to be more pink orange. So I'll get that darker shadow going here. And I like that color. This is how you get dominance, is through color as much as anything. But the detail is going to be here in the head. And then while this is still wet, I can keep my lights and darks going. So here it's lighter. And I always try to do my strokes in the direction that I see. In other words, the feathers, I want to go a little heavier here. Ooh, that's a pink. That's not too bad. Put a little more orange in that. And bring that down.
Kathy,
this is
what colors are you using to make
I'm
pink?
using, thank you for that question. I'm using the Rose Madder with a cad orange. And I think what I'm going to do is take a little round brush and extend these. And I see these little shapes here. And I think they're just large groups of feathers. and maybe they'll show up and maybe they won't. And then when this dries, I'll come along and make that little darker edge and shape that too. See, this is, I'm afraid if I put it in too strong right now, it'll just blend in because it's so wet. But I can use that nice dark for this head and just paint around the white, which is in that the beak formation. Let's see, there's my rose madder, and this is my cad. I just have that little cad orange stuck in there with a kettle. It's called a copper kettle. It's a cheap Joe's color that I used to use a lot more than I do now because I've gone back to liking my burnt sienna. So I have my little cad. These are American Journey paints, and I do love the purity of the colors. I'm going to get this line a little better here, and then I want to add a little bit more water at the top of the head, and then this should be, that should actually be my light spot on top of the head, and my darker area is underneath. Just trying to show a little bit of shadow there, and then I'm just going to get this. See, now that that's dried, I have to soften that up because now it doesn't want to blend unless I help it blend. Okay, so I'm going to bring this around and just deepen that color a little bit more. And obviously now my background looks too pale for this lovely color that I've just added. So I will have to come and darken my background. Let's do the head, and then I'll do, now I'm going to talk about the legs because the legs seem to be, they look purple to me. They really look purple. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go with that because I'm thinking that I want to be authentic enough. But would I get it? What color would I get if I did my red and green together? Okay, let's just, let me just try that. My red and green will probably make a nice brown. So maybe I'll take a touch of that purple with my brown and make it more interesting. Okay, I want to put blue in there. A little more blue in there. See, I'm over there in my warm side. Yeah, it's close to the color. So, if you notice that the knees, however, are back to pink, and I don't want it to be that dark. So, a little more water. Yes, I will make them dark to begin with, and then I will make them a little darker down here where they're going into the water. Well, this is still about right, not too dark. All right, bring that down. I'm going to add my pink to my naughty knees. And extend that in just a little bit. Well, that's kind of fun. All right. Now, I've got to make a dark for my face. I need a little orange right here with this part. And then I'll get to my dark. I noticed that the eye looks yellow. I would like a detail of that eye, but I think I can see this one has a, it's not a dark, it's not a black dot like we would think it might be. The top of the beak would be, the top of the nose or the beak would be a little lighter, and the bottom would be darker. Now, to make a black, I'm going to use my red, and I'm going to use the pure green, the what I call viridian green. I'm going to have to clean my paints because I'm just stirring it all up. There's my black. So I am able to make a dark, almost a black, with my red and my green. So it's a neutral, and the less water and more pigment that you have, you will be able to make a black, or it's called dark, simply called dark. And then this has a little line here, but I don't think it shows up too much in the beak. All right, we're about to finish except for the background and that little bit of an eyeball and more emphasis. Well, it looks really purple to me. It's really purple. I'm gonna put a little more green in it. A little more green right there. Ah, now that looks dark, and that looks better dark. I'm so tempted to put that dark for the eyeball when I know it's really not that dark. So I'm just gonna go light, and I'm gonna circle a little round shape here, and put just a touch of yellow, because that's what I saw. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I saw. Okay, my pencil lines are showing up a bit too much, and I wish they were not. I'm gonna add a touch here, and a little more here, not there, right there. So I felt like this should be darker. And then I'm gonna come around and add this little detail I could see in accentuating the feathers. Just a few strokes.
And which color are they using there?
This is the same that I've had for the whole, rose madder and orange. I think that I might have had a little dark left on my brush. And all right, so next I just have to go with some dark greens and put a little bit more texture in my background, and I will be done. So I don't like that bright green, so I will add a little red to my bright green. And see, this makes this a much nicer dark green right here.